Welcome into the Michigan State Hockey Hub. We are back after a long layoff. I think it's been since April, but we wanted to come back and start for this new season and, of course, kick it off with the season preview show. So, tonight we're going to bring in two guests that you all know very well, two people that are some of the best, if not the best, at talking Michigan State hockey. And I'm going to bring them in now. We have Jeremy and Nate. Now, I want to give Jeremy the floor first. Everyone knows Nate. Everyone knows Jeremy, I know. But Jeremy recently started kind of a new avenue to write about Michigan State hockey. So, Jeremy, tell us about your new adventure here.
Yeah, thanks. I'm with the Rivals Michigan State site now. So just doing a little bit at this point, just covering the recruiting angle. Mostly, as everyone knows, that's my bread and butter is those teenagers. So love to do the recruiting and talk about that. But throughout the season, probably pop in and do more big picture things when and Nate's your guy that's at practice and game by game. So
Yeah, Nate's the behind the scenes guy. Nate's the guy that's more a little bit more boots on the ground, I'd say. So we love to bring Nate on all the time. We need to put him on payroll, I think, because I can't tell you how many
Jeez.
hours of his life I've robbed from him. But Nate, how
the
how are
the
you
biggest
doing?
thing for Nate, I'll say, I gotta jump in. The biggest thing for Nate is on the Jared DeMichael power rankings. He outranks me. So
Whoa.
the DeMike rankings. I tell him every time I'm trying to gun for Nate, but
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get me one of these days, man. But it's always good to be on with you, Clay, and look forward to talking about the upcoming season.
And as everybody knows who was paying attention last year, and we may have new people this year because last year was successful. You're going to get those fringe, basketball, football fans who are going to dip their toes into hockey this year for the first time since maybe ever. So I'm 30, and when I started college was the last time that Michigan State was in the tournament for hockey. So there's going to be people my age even that really haven't been like truly invested in the hockey team before who may now just be joining. So we wanted to give a quick recap of last year. Now, Coach Adam Nightingale took over last year, was absolutely outstanding. 18, 18, and 2, won a Big Ten tournament series last year, something that they had not done. They had not won a Big Ten tournament game since the Big Ten started. So last year kind of started that momentum. We saw some transfers, we saw some freshmen starting. Nate, what was your biggest takeaway from last year that's kind of rolling the momentum into this year? Was it coaching? Was it maybe a different philosophy on the ice? What did you see last year that said, wow, this looks different?
Well, I think you can ask any of the players, and they'll probably tell you something like the Nighty effect. Something in those lines. I mean, it was Nightingale and the system that he's brought in and the offensive philosophy. It really changed things, and they went out and they got guys who, really play that way, the way that he wants them to, and I mean, it resulted in, I think it was the first season with over 100 goals in 10 years or so. So I mean, it was there, and obviously the record shows, that it was working, and now, just with a even more revamped roster this year, obviously the expectations are high.
And Jeremy does spend a lot of time talking to these kids, parents. He has plenty of connections throughout with stretch pass advising. And Jeremy, what I don't know if you can say anything about conversations you had with any players or parents or all of the various kind of hockey family that you have, but what was the vibe around the program that you kind of heard from last year?
I mean, it's just like the perfect combination of the nighty effect, like Nate said, and you couple that with a facilities upgrade, and
Yeah.
it's night and day. What you're hearing coming out of recruiting visits, what you're hearing about guys who want to make a visit and want to like get on that level. It's just totally different than what you were hearing before. It's like a totally refreshed program, but it's not something like a Penn State where you're a shiny new program that has the facility. Like you can also couple that with the history that Michigan State has. So it's just kind of giving him like a lethal combination right now. And you see it even this summer. Like it's just so much more of a picky process of who they're taking commitments from as like the younger ages, and who they're targeting is so much pickier even in just 1 year than where they were a year ago. So yeah, really special vibes coming out of all these visits and everything.
And you know what's cool is I went to the Bowling Green series last year, home series, and the vibe around the hockey program at that time was kind of new and whatnot, but the great work that the Munsters do to pack that student section. And I always want to give them a shout out because it's not easy. I've interviewed them. I went and spent some time there just to kind of see what it's all about. Like the amount of work that they put in to make sure that that place is rocking is awesome. The facilities were incredible. I have a fly on my hat. Sorry about that. And everything about the program last year, just you could feel the turn it took. And what's cool is now you're seeing Minnesota, even Michigan, Penn State, fans on Twitter interacting with my Twitter account saying, "Hey, you all are good. And like you're a fun team. We like Knights." Like all nothing but respect from them, but they are noticing too. It's not just this we're fans hyping it up and we have these a Michigan State lens on it. This team's looking legit. And we want to go ahead and dive straight into the roster. They're returning 7 of the top 10 scorers from last year. What we want to do first is break down each class. Then we'll jump into the schedule. Then we'll get into some fun, predictions and, guesses, really. I don't know why we called predictions because they're not really right. It's just kind of let's have some fun guessing. So we want to start with this big freshman class. And, what I want to do here is just let you all talk about them, especially the freshmen. I just don't have much to add. I will say I watched 20 minutes of a YouTube highlight of one of these players. So I'm going to fill in the 20-minute YouTube highlight, which, of course, is cut to make them look great. So that's all that I've really got besides some stuff that I've read. So, Jeremy, if you want to take it away with the first goalie on the list.
I would say Trey Augustine's probably could put together about a 20-minute highlight just on last season. So,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of people, like their entryway into hockey is you want to try and compare it to football or a sport that they know more of, and so they kind of look at the goalie position as like a quarterback, I guess. Like, a freshman can't come in and can't really play, but like, no, this kid's gonna play. This kid's gonna play 90+% of the games. And it's when you can make the World Junior U20 team as a 17-year-old and you took over all the starts, like that's pretty special. And it's happened before. Guys from the NTDP, like Spencer Knight, who's in the NHL now with the Panthers, played the vast majority of his games in college his freshman year at BC. So, like, this is probably the best American goalie since Knight, and we'll see how it comes together. But the kid's just, you can't shake him. I've seen him live. I've watched a bunch of his games, and it's just, he's the most calm goalie I've probably ever seen at this age.
Yeah. Second round pick from Detroit. We're working from the bottom up on this list for people who are watching. For whatever reason, this is the way the roster on Michigan State was sorted when you click freshman. So it's a little wonky probably, but Trey Augustine projected to be the number 1 goalie. Nate, what have you either seen from him or heard from people around the program?
Yeah, I mean, like Jeremy said, I think he's just unflappable. Nothing gets to him. I mean, and then just his time at the national team, speaks wonders. Only lost 1 game all last season. I don't see a world where he's not starting every single game this upcoming season, unless maybe, the coaching staff wants to give DePasco a game early on. But, I think Augustine, I'll say a comparison. I mean, Michigan State's probably looking for him to be like the next Ryan Miller for them. And, if they can get that kind of performance out of him, especially, right away in his freshman year, I mean, it'll be a huge stepping stone for the program.
Yeah.
So I think Luca's games are going to be GLI when he's at World Junior, right?
Yeah, I guess
about
I should have
it.
said he'll start every game when he's actually available.
Right.
So let's go ahead and talk about Luca Todesco, who's wearing number 31. I put all the numbers here because there's just so many new players. I want people to. I know that there's a roster online, but start associating names with numbers here. But um, he's a freshman as well, and he's coming in, and he's not like some slouch that they just had to have because of a transfer and they needed to fill somebody. Like Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he was like a 3.5, a 3.5 star, like a not some terrible option that they just had to scoop up from a league that was, nothing just to fill a
Yeah.
spot.
No, I mean he's talented, and like to give him some credit, like he had two things that were knocks against him. Like he's a Dan Cole commit, so he had to fight to earn his place and keep his commit. And then on top of that, he's the same birth year as Augustine. Like they're both 03s. You don't really want to bring two same birth year goalies in. Like I know, like just to set the table, like I don't expect Trey to be here 4 years, so I know Luca's the more you expect him to be the 4 year guy. But no, I mean like those two things were kind of knocks against him, and he held on to his spot at MSU by just ripping up the BCHL last year. I do want to like get people prepared. Like his stats are obnoxious from the BCHL, where he played with Penticton last year and went 36-4. But similar to what we saw with Pierce Charleston coming here from the Brooks Bandits, like Penticton was just a whole different level from the entire BCHL last year. Like their whole squad was D1 commits or WHL kids. So, put on a super talented team. So I think it's going to be different for him now to come back into an even competition, maybe a little bit. But he's super talented, big kid. But yeah, like I said, no, that's pretty strong for him to hold on to this spot because he had. There was a lot of times I thought that he just was going to melt away because once Trey was committed here and where he was at as an 03, I figured he might play junior another year and see who would give him the best offer this year. And he, played his way into when Pierce transferred out. Like there's a spot here, and we'll take you this year, and that's commendable. So.
Yeah. Next player on the list, Patrick Geary, who is a defenseman wearing number 2. Number 2 defenseman goes back to my favorite player in recent memories, or one of, is Zach Osborne. I love that guy. But Geary, what can you tell us about him, Nate?
Yeah, he put together a decent season in the USHL, but I mean, just the two big additions here are Lev Shinoff and Sturbach. Those are the two freshmen who, Sturbach, almost a first round pick, ended up being a otherworldly talent. Probably a top 3 pick in next year's NHL draft. So, now as for Geary, he's a solid player. If he gets into the role, but I think just the defensive core that MSU has is going to probably limit his ice time, at least for this season.
Yeah, and it's something to note before Jeremy weighs in is, we had Michigan State had a couple of younger guys who were more depth roles that maybe had a chance to develop and enter the lineup later in their career, transfer out in the past year or two. So, filling that role with a young player who could develop into something is something that we like to see. Jeremy, what do you have on Patrick Geary?
I mean, he's a big, like a thick kid, man. He's 6'1", close to, probably by the end of the season is probably close to 190, 195 pounds, like over 100 pounding minutes. He's not really a goon out there, but like the kid plays with an edge, and I like that a lot. He was if I remember correctly, he was a pretty early commit in the Nightingale days. Like he was one of the first ones who committed like last August. That wasn't an 06 birth year. Like he wasn't the early ones like a Van Vliet or a Baker, but he committed in as an older kid to the program pretty early. So, again, held on to his spot, even though they started to maybe pass him by with a Stravik and a Lev Shinoff commitment. Like he's still here and earned his place. I think he's going to be one who if you can get yourself into the lineup for 4 to 6 games this year, you'll take it. I know he wants more, but like that's probably like something that I would just say is like he's probably a 4 to 6 game guy. Earn your place where you can, and just hopefully you show out when you get in there.
Moving on to Artie Lefschnoff. Again, we're not perfect with these pronunciations, so don't hold it to us. But Jeremy, tell us what you can tell us about him. And before we do, I do want to say, Nate, I don't know, did Nate break the news of the commit on this one? Is that true?
Yes, sir.
And he is a player who, if I remember right, Nate, interrupt me if I'm wrong, he just kind of was like on campus. There wasn't like anything previously saying that he was like committing. Is that right? Or no, he just like showed up when they all signed, right? Is that correct?
Not. I mean, he was on campus and committed. I mean, he was. It was kind of a debate whether he would play college this year, and Michigan State made a really, really hard late push at him, and once they get him on campus, just the facilities and everything, it just speaks wonders, and it was enough for him to sign on for this year.
Yeah, and he's thought by some to be a top 5 pick potentially in next year's NHL draft. So Jeremy, wow us with him. Tell us all you know about him.
I mean, yeah, like 100%. I don't see how he falls out of the top 5. Like the kid is so smooth. Like he's in the new era of defensemen where he's a 200-foot player and just as comfortable in the offensive zone as the defensive zone. I mean, incredibly lucky bounce for MSU in a way. Like if you don't have these global situation going on, this kid's in the OHL. But the OHL is not allowing players from Belarus to play right now, or Russia due to the war in Ukraine. So I think it's just like it was a weird quick recruitment. It was one where I think he spent the whole season in the USHL just waiting to see if he could go to the OHL, and then when that wasn't an option, it became just a battle of the big schools. I think it came down to what wasn't it, like Michigan State, and I can't remember, it was BU
Michigan,
at least.
UConn. I think Boston College was in there too. Like just
and Vermont randomly.
Vermont, Vermont. Yeah.
Vermont was in it because one of their assistants used to coach in Belarus or something like that. So it was a quick recruitment, and it was super quiet, and it just came down to like, hopefully that the OHL doesn't change their rule. And, it was between, I think, MSU or, going the college route or playing pro hockey in Europe right now. But, again, getting out of the KHL to the NHL is tough. So I think we should enjoy our guaranteed one season with him and see what we get. I don't know if he's going to be here too. But that's a level of commit that even in the heyday of MSU, like I think like the best NHL draft pick I've ever remember seeing was like AJ Thalen, who was a bust, but was like 11th or so. Yeah. Like top 5 is insane. That's just
Nate,
for a program that hasn't made the tournament, as long as we haven't made the tournament, to have a top 5 pick is just incredible.
Nate, do you have anything to add on him?
I mean, Jeremy did a pretty good job. The kid is so smooth, and he's so sound defensively, and he's so good offensively. He's gonna be a treat to watch, and it's something that MSU fans shouldn't take for granted, even if it's only just for one season.
And this is one player that has plenty of highlights on YouTube. So if you were like me and at 1:13 a.m. you couldn't sleep last night, go on YouTube, man. He has a great shot. Like I had never watched this kid play. Full disclosure. I get on and start watching these like extended highlight 10-minute videos and stuff, and I was like, there's no way this guy's coming to Michigan State, man. There's just no way. So the blind eye had the exact same reaction as you, Jeremy. Kind of like, whoa, wait up now. This feels like we're getting away with robbery or something.
Yeah.
Because this doesn't typically happen. Again, new program, new coach. I'm this close to saying, like, throw everything from 2 years to about the past 10 years before last year out the window. This is just so different. But we'll move on to Austin Orvitz, who's number 6 and an incoming freshman. Another player I don't know much about. So, Nate, we'll let you take this one away.
Yeah, another kid from Green Bay. I think the MSU coaching staff loves the Gamblers. They have a few commits from them. But, I think for Oravets, I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be right on that fringe as a 7th D guy. I think without Lev Shunov committing here, so quickly, that he's probably in the lineup more nights than not. But he's going to have to battle it out for his spot. But I think he's a really solid defenseman. Like, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Matt Baswell in the build and the way he plays on the blue line. So, he was another early commit. So, and then fought and earned his place.
Jeremy?
Yeah. I mean, they love the Gamblers. They have the Leon connection out there in the Gamblers, and I mean, Pennsylvania kid, played with the Pens Elite coming up, really talented out of Pens Elite, kind of a late riser, played up into his 18U AAA year, and spent 1 year in Dubuque, got moved over to Green Bay. I think Green Bay, but consistent. I mean, 21 points both spots. So I agree with Nate. I think, for me, him and Victor Herteg are probably fighting out that 7th D spot all the time. Victor's got the NHL draft pick background, but Austin's just steady, just a steady guy that you know what you're getting every night. Also someone that, I mean, I think he was in a leadership role last year. I think he was the captain in Green Bay, maybe captain or assistant captain. I can't remember. And so I think this is another one kind of like I talked about with Luca compared to Trey. He won't be the NHL guy that's gone in 2 years, but he'll be your 4-year guy, and maybe he's in a leadership role his senior year and just steady guy.
Next guy is Maxim Stravek, who was a 2nd-round pick by Buffalo this year. And this is the player who I watched a lot of last night on YouTube, because one cool thing for those of you who are just itching for it, they have his whole the World Juniors or whatever it was highlights, but it was also not just good stuff. It's just a little bit of everything. So it was fun to watch, but man, I was blown away with this guy. He can do a little bit of everything. Blocks a ton of shots too.
Mm-hmm.
And really got the puck out of his zone well, and is a little bit craftier than just what I expected for whatever reason. So I'd love to hear what you all think about him. Somebody who probably has more than 15 minutes of YouTube under their belt.
He's physical. He is physical, man. You get over that blue line, you get into his area, within 3 to 4 feet of him, he closes fast and he finishes his checks. That's what I remember when I pulled up his video right after he committed, which, man, I feel bad that Artie committed for almost in a way over Maxim, because Maxim was an absolute stud. He was who I loved in this class the whole time, and then Artie kind of steals his thunder a little bit, but no, Maxim, I turned on, and I think the first shift he had, first USHL game last year, some kid comes over the blue line, he just blows him up in front of the bench, and it's okay, this isn't just an NHL talent who wants to get out here and score. He plays with some physicality, and I really like him a lot. I think Buffalo got a steal in the 2nd round. That's a kid that really was close to playing himself into the back half of the 1st round there. And just, he's going to fly under the radar a little bit, which I like, because I think, I like that someone's going to shine over him a little bit, but that's people shouldn't overlook that grab. That was really strong.
Yeah, I think, just talking with the staff at Sioux Falls, I think it's a big indictment of their, they say, if he was not the first guy over the wall on our penalty kill or on our power play or on a 5-on-5 late in the game, then we are doing something wrong, because he's the best player we have and he needs to be on the ice in all those situations. And for him to come over from Slovakia and just seamlessly kind of transition into Sioux Falls, and just talking to them from day one, everyone in the locker room was would look to him for leadership, and I think that says a lot. And he's a really, really good prospect and a really, really good D-man.
Yeah, and I know nothing about scouting. I know Jeremy knows so much more, but when I was watching what I was how sometimes you just see a player and you're yeah, that guy's going to play in the NHL. You can just see it. You don't have to know about all the different angles and what's bad, what's good, what's kind sometimes you just see a player and you're I see that guy looks like other NHL players that I've watched, and that's kind of the vibe that I got from him. But moving on, Tommy Manisto, is that what we decided to go with? Anybody can correct me there.
Yeah, we'll go with Manisto for now. We'll get the pronunciation and the line charts and everything in a little while. So
Yeah. So for now,
We'll
use
get
your
it cleaned up.
imagination. Jeremy, what can you tell us about him?
I mean, this is the guy that I've seen the least video on. So
Okay.
I got to be honest, like I'm going off of, you got to read other guys because he's played in Finland the whole way up. Like
Yeah.
he didn't do the USHL route. He played in Tapara for their U20 last year. Really good Finnish organization. He's got, and he was also at World Junior, so I tried to take as much out of World Junior as I could for the limited window that I had to see him. But no, I mean, he's one that I think is going to take a while to adjust. Like they just don't play. Playing in Finland, you're playing on basically Mariucci Arena every night, so it's wide open, not nearly the same physicality. He didn't play in any senior games because if he plays in a senior game over there, it would have messed up some of his eligibility here. So I think for him, the jump to the North American ice sheet, the physicality, playing 24 and 25-year-old men consistently, it's going to take him a little while to probably find his footing. But there's a lot of high upside on him. Like he's, again, I could say this all night with all these freshmen, but like he's a fringe NHL guy. Like he can absolutely play himself into a role in the NHL as like a free agent or, what he's done here or have an extremely successful Euro pro career. So I'm excited to see what he looks like because, again, he's the hidden surprise. I don't know what we're getting out of him for sure.
Yeah, I think it's going to take him a little time to adjust too. I mean, he did tear it up in Finland, but yeah, and the staff is really, really high on him. I think they expect him to be a guy who's going to contribute this season. I don't know how early on he's going to do that, but I think, like Jeremy said, he's kind of the most unknown but most interesting kind of freshman that they have coming in.
Okay, there's a typo on the screen here for the next player. Nate, I'm going to let you pronounce the last name for us. Griffin
Jareki, I'm not sure. I think he's the last guy of this class that the staff committed. So he's the last guy coming in. From what I've heard, he seems like, maybe kind of like the class clown of the class. It seems like the guys, all the teammates just absolutely love having him around. So, but again, he's kind of a little bit unknown. Not sure, they return so many guys, like you said, 7 of the 10 top scorers, and they bring in all these, kind of high valued transfer forwards. It's just going to be a little unknown as to some of these.
It's weird,
up front, if they're going to, get ice time early on.
And to Jeremy's point, and then I'll let Jeremy weigh in. But a lot of these guys you don't really know, and every player I've talked to talks about that transition coming into freshman year. And some players hit the ground running, like we saw last year with Dewar and Russell and whatnot. And some players take some time. I mean, we've even seen a player like I think Connor Wood went back to juniors for a while and whatnot. Like it's each player is different. There's obviously a lot coming in, and like Nate said, there's transfers still to talk about too. So, we like giving the background that these two can provide us, but it's not set in stone or law. It's not this guy's going to be the starter. This guy's top line. Now, I think Trey Augustine is kind of set in stone, but with a lot of these other guys, there could be some shifting around, and that's kind of the fun of it as well.
Yeah, I would say both Griffin and Owen Baker, who is the next one on your list, like they come together from Omaha. They were both in Omaha together. Griffin was a Denver commit, so one that the staff kind of pretty quietly flipped. I didn't really hear much words on that, but I mean, Griffin and Owen actually to me too are pretty similar players. Griffin's a little different size makeup than Owen. Owen's more of a little cerebral, a little bit smaller, but I think both these guys are just going to need to take the year and kind of blend in and play when they're given opportunities, find a role, make yourself a a fourth line role if you can, or a PK specialist, like whatever it takes to get into the lineup and separate you apart. But I can agree with Nate. Like if you follow Nate Griffin on Instagram, like anything he posts, the boys are all over him and love him. And that was the same thing out of Omaha. Like they were all. You love to see that. Like it's like sort of a hidden thing as a scout and an advisor is like you watch a guy's commitment and see like do his teammates congratulate him or like who's in the mentions, and like they were all over it. So you could tell that he's definitely one of the boys gas up and future Goofus Award winner. So
last freshman that we're talking about today is Gavin O'Connell. And I'm going to let Nate take this away because he had mentioned before recording that he thinks he's a pretty talented player. So, Nate, what can you tell us?
Yeah, I think in terms of the freshman forwards, O'Connell's probably the one I'm highest on. I think he's going to contribute pretty early on. And, I think he's, kind of like we saw with Dorwart last year or Russell last year, a guy who's going to be a high point guy early on, someone who's, going to stand out. And I believe he was a Duluth commit that the staff flipped.
Yeah.
And if Duluth's going after a guy, he's probably pretty good. So, I'm high on O'Connell.
Yeah. He reminds me a lot of Dorwart, actually. Like he's got his finish at the net, his just like his play style, his skating style, like there's so much that reminds me of Dorwart and O'Connell, even the like lateness of a flip, and not that Dorwart was committed, but like he reminds me a lot. And like if he can come in and even have 80% of a freshman season like Dorwart did on this lineup, like that's going to be a huge contribution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on, I know we spent a lot of time on the freshmen. We will not have to spend as much time, obviously, because we're more familiar with some of these players. The transfers we'll spend a little bit more time on. We'll start at the top here with Carson Doorn, one of my favorite players last year. A guy who can do a little bit of everything. And I remember watching him like in the beginning of the season, seeing a few moves and just thinking like, whoa, like this guy has a little bit more offensive talent than I would have imagined. What type of role do you think he's going to play this year? Is he a top line guy? Is, some of these transfers and freshmen going to maybe move him to a second line? Like what do you envision with him?
I mean, so Nate, you had the line chart, so that's
Nate makes the line chart every weekend, actually.
Yeah.
I'd say he's a top 6 still. I think it's hard to move him out of there with, the season he had last year. And, I think, he was a late add, but if I had to pick one guy who benefited the most from Will Morlock and the strength staff and having a shooting room and all of the facility upgrades and stuff, I think it's probably Dorwart. I mean, he got a lot stronger and a lot faster. And, from what I've heard, he just lives in that shooting room. And, for a guy to take advantage of all that stuff, and then see it happen on the ice in actual competition is pretty cool to see. And I just expect Carson to have a really good season again.
Yeah, I can say I agree with you as well. Carson and Baswell, who I know we'll get to down later in this list, like those guys didn't go home for the summer. They stayed here. Like I remember talking to Carson, like he's from Oregon originally. I think mom moved into Minnesota recently, but talking to him about his summer plans, like what are you gonna do? You're gonna get away, gonna go home for a little bit, gonna do some travel, and he's like, going home for about 4 days, and I'm gonna be back here with Will Morlock because why would I go home and work out at a gym? Will's here, and and that kid lived in the gym all summer, so I think he he would have been driven to do that no matter what, but I think he also saw the writing on the wall of like, I can't rely on last year if this is who they're going to bring in, transfer wise to compete with me. And so no, I think, and then he's an assistant captain. Like, so I think that speaks really loudly about you if you're a sophomore. I think Carson's 100%, pretty well set in that top 6. And for all we talked about on the last slide about the whole freshman like transition, he was the one that just game one looked comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Man, I love hearing all of that. That's got me fired up. The next guy on the list is Gavin Best, a player who kind of bounced in and out of the lineup, provided a depth role. Took a while for him to get in the lineup. Has a little bit of size to him. I believe he's about 6'2", and he didn't score. He played in 10 games, but there's a few times he kind of flashed a little bit to me. Not as like, oh my gosh, this guy could develop into one of the better players on the team type of flashing, but I thought in the past 5-10 years, like a lot of those healthy scratches who got in the lineup was just kind of a body in the lineup, and you didn't really see much. I saw some in Gavin Best. I thought, okay, like this is better depth than they've had.
Yeah, I think this is a big season for Gavin. Getting in the lineup, in a few games late, and then just there's so many new faces, and it's an opportunity for him to, earn that fourth line or third line role and keep it, with his play. I think I agree. Last year there was a few games where he had some flashes. I think he had a breakaway against Minnesota or something that couldn't put home, but was in the right position to give himself that opportunity. So I'm interested to see early on if he's able to get in the lineup and perform and stay in there consistently.
Yeah, I'd say for me, Gavin, is one that I agree with you, make or break, because it kind of feels like you either this is where you finish out your career, or is it hitting the transfer portal after this year? And for me, if he wants to find someone to emulate, play style, everything, this kid could be the next Jagger Joshua if he wants to buy in to that role and take what comes with it too. Of you're gonna take your lumps, you're gonna take a beating, but he has the size and the ability to play in a way that Jagger did, but you gotta want to buy in and earn that the way that Jagger did, and he took his time to earn it too. So yeah, it seems like a big year for him where you hate to tell a kid he's already on the way out, but you want to stick here. This is probably the year you got to decide, is this where I'm finishing or not?
And we see that all the time across college sports, especially with the transfer portal rules, where it's, this kid's talented, and it's almost like you want him to go somewhere else where he can blossom more. It's not like we want this guy off the team type of thing, but who knows? Maybe he does establish a role this year. One guy that we know will have a big role is Daniel Russell, who was great as a freshman last year. I mean, I think that we've talked about him on this podcast so much. I don't need to break down the Daniel Russell, film or whatever. But Jeremy, what type of role do you see him in as a top line, top six type player again this year?
I mean, you just got to keep him with Carson. You can't break those two up, man.
They were great.
I mean, they played in junior together. We're at, if you put the end of their junior season plus here, you're probably talking, those guys have probably played 80 to 90 games on the same line together. And it's working. So don't fix it. It's working just fine. Keep it together. Give him a center to play with and just let him go. But he's, I think, I haven't sat at practice obviously with the gun, but I think this guy's probably got the hardest shot on the team. Russell can absolutely crank it, and I'm just excited to see with him with some more talent around him what he can do.
Yeah, I think he was my biggest surprise last year. He kind of really a lot more skill and a lot more evasiveness, and just you seemed very fluid on the ice a lot more than I was expecting. So yeah, I expect him to be a top six guy, but like Jeremy said, most important is keep him with Carson. That's not a better combination, I don't think, on this team.
Joey Larson, a transfer from, help me out here,
Northern Michigan,
yeah. Comes in after actually a productive year at Northern Michigan. Wow. Nate, what can you tell us about him? I really don't know much besides the stats.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Larson. I think he was either the top point scorer or top goal scorer in the portal. But I think it was just kind of a situation where he had a really good year at Northern and was like, I'll check the portal and see if one of these bigger schools, wants to take me on. And, once Michigan State, got him on campus. And again, I mean, you can compare Michigan State's facilities to Northern Michigan's facilities. And, he's also, I think he's from Brighton. So,
Yep.
It's about 4 hours closer to home. So, but yeah, excited to see him. He's a gifted goal scorer, and I'm sure he'll be an everyday lineup guy.
I say, unlike a lot of these kids, where I can tell you I scouted them on video, like Joey's actually a kid I've seen in person for years. I scouted him when he was at Heartland High School the year that he won Mr. Hockey. Tried to get him to come to our junior team up in Pembroke. He was way too good for Pembroke, so it was a short conversation. But yeah, absolutely. Like the kids, like this is the kid that's like late bloomer, like personified, right? Like he plays high school hockey instead of AAA, wins Mr. Hockey his senior year, goes to the BCHL, has a pretty good year in Chilliwack playing for Brian Maloney. Jumps over to the NAHL the next year mostly, and then all of a sudden ends up in Muskegon scoring 32 goals his 1 year in the USHL, which is just like unheard of. So kind of crazy last 2 years. Like he's just found this goal scoring gear that he didn't even have goal scoring that level at MHSAA. So I don't know where he found it, but like it just clicked. And so I think he's going to be one that, like, no, he's not going to play a top six role, but like if you have a guy like that can push for minutes on your fourth line, then you're in a pretty good place. And he clearly is okay accepting that role, because I'm sure he wasn't coming here out of the portal expecting top six coming from Northern Michigan. So whereas Northern would absolutely let him be top six, power play number one, like whatever you need. So you love to see it. And local kid, and I'm excited to see him at the MSU stage. I have to tell you, man, you could have gave me true serum in 2018 when I saw him at Heartland, and there's no way I saw him getting to this level. So like he's earned all this.
Awesome. Now the next player, Tiernan Shouty, I know Jeremy's a big fan of, and
Personal
Shouty
favorite.
actually confirmed today that he will join the podcast. 2 weeks, he'll be on this podcast. So looking forward. He's also my wife's favorite player. I think Wyatt, Jeremy's son's favorite player, maybe. Is that right?
No. Wyatt's favorite, I think, is Carson, because he's been on a Zoom call with Carson, and Carson has beautiful hair. So.
Oh, well, that's all it takes. But Jeremy, tell us, Shouty, scrappy, fun, fast, smaller player, but just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, he's gonna be in a fight for this year, right? Like I think I thought he had a great freshman year. I thought the line, putting him with Tanner Kelly and just letting them be like, two little kids with Muka in the middle was an awesome line to watch. But they've lost Muka this year, so they've got to find like their new footing. I think he's going to be in a battle to stay consistently high minutes in the lineup. Going to be a bottom six forward, but he plays that role really well. Great on the PK. I just love having him. But when he's on the show, make sure you ask him about having a brother at U of M and what that's like. So,
okay, I will.
Yeah, I think you're really going to enjoy talking to him, Clay. He's one of my favorites. Whenever Jamie brings him out to the podium, it's going to be a fun interview. Just a really, really fun guy. But yeah, like Jeremy said, probably bottom six forward, but does play that role well. Is really good on the PK. Good net crasher. I think that game at Munn against Michigan where he scored the game winner was quintessential of that. But yeah, it's going to be a battle. And just to go back real quick, I think 2 years ago, Griffin Jareki is a transfer from Northern Michigan, comes here and is expected to be maybe who was the top goal scorer in the portal from Northern, comes here and he's going to be fighting to get on the ice. So that's just indicative of the level of talent increase in 2 years.
For sure.
Matt Baswell's the next one. Probably my favorite D-man from last year's team. I just love the way that this kid plays, and he brings something on the power play. He can run point, and he just moves the puck well. And he's the guy here. Well, actually, no, sorry. I was about to say I tweeted, but it's a scheduled tweet, so you'll see it at some point in time. But I think that he's like underrated in the D-corps because of the freshmen coming in having such high ceilings and draft pedigrees and whatnot. But like Baswell's the guy, and we kind of talked about this offline before we hit record. I think he's the one that's like taking a big jump this year. And it's going to kind of not the forgotten guy or the surprising guy, because it wouldn't really be surprising, but just don't forget about Matt Baswell and how good he is.
Yeah, he is very solid, and he did an outstanding job manning the first power play unit last year. I don't know if he's going to keep that role with the two freshman guys coming in, but yeah, he's just really, really solid and more gifted offensively than I think he gets a little credit for. I think when last season you had guys like Cole Krieger looking like a forward, and you have David Gucciardi, at once every 5 games ripping a toe drag that it's tough to compare to. But like Jeremy said about Carson, Baswell's also an alternate captain this year, and that says a lot as a sophomore to earn an A on your sweater.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think Matt for me I'm with you, Clay. He is my favorite D-man, and he's a great kid to kind of talk to. And I think for me, the thing I'm looking for this year is just the game slow down for him. Like, he was all over the place last year, like in a good way. Like, he was an energy bomb. He was all over, but he had a tendency to, make a pass out of place, lose the puck off his stick occasionally, just like a little mistakes that, like, you're a freshman, you're allowed. Like, it's gonna happen. It's a game full of bounces, but I think, in that freshman to sophomore jump, I'm just hoping the game looks a little slower to him and he just kind of settles into his role a little bit more. And if he could play the way he does, like Nate said, where he's point man on the power play, if he could just bring that attitude to every shift he has, he looks so calm, cool, and collected. Like, that's what we need. Is just the way he finished last year. I'm excited about him. I think he could be a top pair D even with everything that we brought in.
Last guy on here we talked about a little bit, 6'6", 6th-round pick to New Jersey, Victor Herteg. We talked about him some, possible in and out of the lineup, 7th D guy, big body. At times last year looked like he was experiencing that transition, I think. And, he had to come over to North America and whatnot. So do you see this guy as somebody who could climb up? Or, to me, the way that you all have talked about these other players is the level of talent. It's just higher than him that they've brought in. And it's not necessarily that he's not talented, but he's really helping the bottom, 3 or 4 in this, or I'm sorry, the bottom pairing or the extra skater in this lineup. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and I would caution people that, yeah, he's got the NHL draft pick next to him, but 6th round pick, that was pretty big on potential. I think that was a lot
size,
of
yeah.
Yeah, you're 6'6" and you have some tools. We'll take a flyer on you. I'm not gonna use strong words like disappointed or anything like that, but I think, like, Victor, he's got a lot to jump up on. I think last year wasn't quite the impact I thought maybe he could have. So kind of similar to Gavin Best, not in like he's hitting the portal maybe, but like Gavin Best, I think this is a big year for Victor because, like, the classes aren't getting less talented. So if you're not finding a way before your junior year to get yourself off that 7th D position, it's not going to be easier just because some guys leave. Like, there's talented kids coming behind you. So pretty big year for him to find a spot.
And we've seen these D-men, like Jeremy said, later round pick, kind of a flyer, especially if they have size. Red Holland, I think Boyd was that way too in previous years. Nate, do you have anything to add about Herteg, or should we move on to juniors?
Kind of what Jeremy said. I think it's a big year for him. I think for the staff, they were maybe playing Herteg over a guy like Paul Connor or Cal Dybitz because he was one of their commits, and like he, is 6'6", has all this potential. Let's throw him out there and see what he can do. And but yeah, just it's going to be a big year for him, and kind of like what Jeremy said about Matt. Some things need to slow down for him, and hopefully Michigan State's able to see that.
Yeah. In the interest of time, we're going to go through junior a little bit faster. Tanner Kelly, we've talked about a bunch. He took a huge leap. I think he had 5 points his freshman year and jumped up to 18 last year. I know that we're all big Tanner Kelly fans. So what I'm going to do is just kind of ask what.
That was your Will Morlock Player of the Year last year, Nate. So that was.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
one of
So,
those
okay,
runners
I'm just
who-
going to ask one Tanner Kelly question. I'm only going to ask Nate because he's earned the right. Can he take another leap and score more points than 18? Over or under 18 points that he put up last year? Will he have more or less this year?
I'm gonna go under, but not because like he's gonna drop off or anything.
Yeah.
I think that maybe
His
just some
role,
of the
maybe.
opportunities. Yeah, I think I think he was on the second power play last year. Like I don't think he's gonna be on a power play this year, probably with just so much firepower that they added. So, but it's season hasn't started. I don't know what I'm talking about. So.
Red Savage transferred from Miami, Ohio. Everyone knows his name. What's that?
I was going to jump in for you and let you know before we move too far. We did miss one sophomore, which
Who was
it? Ike Howard is probably the biggest transfer in. Man.
Wait up.
But no, I was just saying we can talk about transfers like Savage and Ike Howard.
Sorry. I totally forgot to put him on the list. Go ahead, Jeremy. Thank you so much. Go ahead with Isaac Howard.
So I'll kind of combine both, like Savage and Howard were two juniors with multiple years of eligibility that came in through the transfer portal. Like Savage, I think, and they're kind of similar in like I think both need to see big jumps at their new school. Like Savage is a late round pick of the Red Wings. I think he's going to be a guy who is always playing for that, like find a way to work your way up to AHL to NHL type of thing. But Ike Howard comes in as the guy who Tampa Bay Lightning took at the end of the first round. And he went from being like Mr. Goal Scorer at the NTDP shooting all the time to just in Duluth not really finding his way. So I think for both of these guys, both Savage and Ike Howard, like it's a pretty big year for them of you got to show that maybe there was something at the last school that it wasn't a good fit, scheme wise, or just wasn't like where you were comfortable. And you got to take some jumps here because, your NHL teams are going to be watching pretty close. Like if it's not working at multiple colleges, it's going to be a concern.
I might need to stop making these slides at past 1 a.m. without proofreading and everything because I thought I'm sure I got everybody, but I forgot one of the bigger transfers. Nate, what can you tell us about Howard? What type of role do you think he is? Top six? Is he somebody who could be a third liner? Like where do you think he could potentially slot in?
I see him as a top six. I mean, he's a first round pick, and I think he's at Duluth it was a struggle for him, and then because he was so good at the national team under Nightingale, and then now this it seems like a perfect situation for him where Nightingale takes over here, and he can just kind of come in and hopefully try to be that guy that he was with the national team. But we'll see. I'm going to save most of my Howard stuff for when we get to predictions here.
Okay, great. Because anyone who's really, really paying attention notices I think we've had 5 players listed as top 6, maybe 4. The last player I want to talk about here before we move on is David Gucciardi, who, his freshman year really looked good, and I think last year, I don't know why. Maybe I just expected too much. Maybe I expected him to take this leap forward, and I just did not quite feel like he did. What did you all see from freshman year to sophomore year, and maybe what he could become? How about this, Jeremy? What did you think of his jump from freshman year to sophomore year? And Nate, what do you think his kind of role, and maybe can he take another jump in his junior year?
Yeah, so I'll go first. I mean, jump wise, you can ask any of my clients. I'm toughest on my defensemen because that's what I played. So they get the least compliments on them. They get the most notes of any of my kids. And Gucci would be one that I'd be giving a ton of notes to, like, because I know there's so much there. But he's just he can light your world on fire and you'll love him 1 minute, and then the next game you can be like so frustrated by him.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was I didn't see a consistency. And, we talked about Victor needing to take that big jump. Gucci, I think, didn't need as big of a jump, but I don't think that he took the jump he probably wanted to take last year.
Yeah, I think I think up to about the GLI, yeah, he just wasn't as consistent as I think that they wanted him to be. I think if he's able to take maybe his last 6 games from this past year, where I thought he was actually really, really good, is about his last 5 or 6 games. If he can build on that, then, I think he's going to have a really good season. I do think, that Notre Dame series in the Big Ten tournament, I think he was probably their best defenseman, him or Baswell, one of those two guys. So, I think he was really big down the stretch, playing a lot more consistent, and we'll see if he can carry that over.
I don't know if I remember this right. Was he dealing with an injury at one point last year?
Yeah, or he started the year he had mono and he was in the hospital for a couple of days. But
I thought there was something.
That was at the start of the season.
Yeah.
We know a couple of these guys. John Moore's back as the third goalie, the Goofus Award winner from last year. I don't think we need to dive into that, but always good to see the third goalie sticking around the program, especially if he's well liked in the locker room. James Crossman, another transfer. Nate, tell us about James Crossman.
Yeah, kid from Brown had just, he's going to be kind of, I think, the same role as like Michael Underwood was last year. Just a steady guy. He's going to, be a defensive defenseman. He's not going to be scoring a bunch of goals or anything like some of these other guys on our blue line, but just a solid defenseman. He's going to stay home. Good blue line depth.
Yeah, and anytime you can bring in somebody with some background, I think that he actually had did he have 9 goals last year or something, or am I thinking of someone else? So, he wasn't known as a goal scorer, but just ended up scoring a few goals out. Was that him?
Yeah, he had 9 goals because someone has to score goals for Brown. So yeah, it's a tough spot there. A tough spot.
Jeremy, Nash is one of my favorite players as well, and somebody who does not get nearly enough praise, I don't think. What do you think he can become with this new lineup with all these D-men coming in?
I mean, I can almost copy and paste the Gucci already a little bit. I'm so tough on Nash. When I watch Nash, I'm so tough on him and call so many things out. But again, I'm tough on defensemen, man. I am super harsh. But no, I mean, I really liked where he came along last year. I think he found a spot on the power play where he became an asset, which wasn't always the case. And hey, I mean, voted captain, definitely. You don't usually vote a captain. You think that's not going to be consistently in the lineup and have a big role. So I think for him, he's going to probably have to be that steadying presence where you put him with one of those super freshmen and just say I need you as the vet out here right now, and I need you to bring them along, but also rein them in a little bit too. So I think he's going to have almost a bigger role in what he does for the makeup of this team, in the room and how they are on the bench. But then he's also going to contribute a ton on the ice. He took the jumps that you like to see, and this is a bit it's always a big year, but for him, I think he's playing right now for what can he get an NHL entry deal? Can he be Jagger Joshua and play himself into a good AHL deal with a 2-way contract, or is he going to scratch it out in the AHL? So I think he's got a lot ahead of him right now.
Now the next player, Nicholas Mueller, was obviously numbers wise the most improved player. I just loved what he was able to unlock last year. Important on the power play, can play just any role. It's just the fact that he came back this year, I thought was awesome. That fired me up. Really love what we saw last year. Now, is he going to play a bottom 6 role this year? Is he a third line, fourth line guy? Is that what we're thinking, Nate?
I mean, I'd probably slot him in as your second or third line center, just kind of depending on where things fall. I don't think for this team that maybe outside of your top line that the lines are going to really be that, far off talent wise,
Yeah.
When you look at last year, the fourth line with with guys like Tucker and them, and that compared to the second line was a little different, but here with all the people added, I think it's going to be a lot more consistent, 1 through 4. But Nico's just a great kid. Always has a smile on his face. First guy to if some player doesn't want to give an interview or kind of had a rough day, he'll just fill right in and yeah, he's one of my favorites to talk to. So
Yeah.
And then obviously just a huge jump. He's really good in the faceoff circle. He's a great forechecker. He's gonna provide all those things again for the Spartans this year. So
just a good hockey player. Another good hockey player that I forgot to put on this list is Jeremy Davidson. I don't know how I overlooked his name, but Jeremy, I know you all were sitting there thinking, I'm going to have to remind him of Jeremy Davidson too. But he does fit on this slide. So Jeremy Davidson, he transferred over and provided some goal scoring and probably a guy that could slot kind of up and down the lineup a little bit if need be, if an injury or anything happens. And I kind of like having him on this team with the experience, especially with so many freshmen who could be playing big roles.
Yeah, he's gonna have to fight for his spot this year, because I think the tough thing for him is he had a great sophomore year on a bad team, like that year where it was him, Tucker, and Lewandowski, like the only guys who could score goals on a whole team. And he goes from that to, I think last year he just kind of struggled to find his way a little bit, and just I think a little bit of it was honestly like just some puck luck, like just reverting to the mean, like that shot off the crossbar is not going in, it's going crossbar and out this year. Like there was some of that for him, but I think it was a big adjustment for him to get up to the speed of what Nightingale wants to play at, and so I think it'll be interesting. I slot him probably more as like a third or fourth line guy most of this year, but he's got the absolute talent to be a second line guy. And like Nate said, you could really slide guys up and down those 3 lines. So he's going to be important. He's going to be a good veteran presence, because this is a young team. So
last guy on the list, Reed Lepster, who was originally a Michigan State commit, what feels like 34 years ago. I remember back when I was maybe this tall, DMing Jeremy about these commits. It feels like forever ago, but
I know
played at UMass and is coming over. What can you tell us about his UMass career, and kind of is he somebody who could? I mean, there's just so many names and only so many spots, right? I mean, what's going to happen? Here?
I've got a soft spot for Reed. He was one of the ones kind of. I think honestly he was committed around not too far after like Lewandowski committing, like. So when I was first getting into recruiting and following these kids, and close the circle. He's back at MSU, and his aunt is like a MSU gymnastics legend, so we get to close that circle, and just he comes back and plays for DeMichael again, who got him to flip in the first place. Like I don't know, it's pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited to have Reed here. He kind of reminds me of like not as local, but he's like a Tommy Goodsir type for me, where like. You love to have a kid who's like a good program kid like that come in as a grad year, and just, be a good. He's won a national championship at UMass with DeMichael, so he's been to the top of the mountain. So I think for me, he's again someone that could probably play. He's going to have to fight for his fourth or third line role, but maybe that veteran experience wins him the spot over some of the younger guys who are down at the bottom of the depth chart there.
Yeah. So we're just going to quickly flash the schedule up here. Everyone knows where they can find the schedule. Of course, we have the non-conference, that at Boston College game, man. I would love to go to that, but probably not in the budget this year. I'll probably be I'll probably go to Ohio State. That, living in Kentucky, that's pretty doable for me. We might have just lost Nate there. Of course, you have Minnesota and Notre Dame before the break, GLI, followed by the exhibition before you go to Penn State. Later on in the year, you have the home and home with Michigan, and you finish out against Wisconsin. Now, I'd love to talk more about the schedule, but I don't want to hold you all here, and I don't want people to turn off after an hour and 35 minutes or whatever. So let's go ahead and get into some expectations, predictions, guesses, whatever the professional thing is to call it. First things first, you can say whatever you want, and guess what? It will not be held against you. If you're wrong, nothing will happen. If you're right, nothing will happen. But it's just fun to do. Where do you think Michigan State finishes in the Big Ten this year? Jeremy, you can go first.
Man, I have not done enough crunching on where everyone else sits.
No one has.
I'm going to say second.
Second. Man, I love that.
I think they're the second best team in the league. I think just going through the lineup there, if they can pull it together and Trey Augustine can play how I know Trey Augustine can play, I think second's on the table for sure.
We'll wait. I think Nate's trying to get back in. I think he's having some potato Wi-Fi type issues or something here. I don't know what's going on. While he's doing that, going to ask your prediction for most improved player first. We'll start with that. Who do you think falls under most improved player? If you want, I can flash some of the rosters up here.
I'll say I got the roster up over here. I mean, that one's a tough one because I was so happy with so many guys where they were at last year. So honestly, like, you know what, I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I'm going to say it's Ike Howard, and he wasn't on this roster last year.
That's a great
but I will say he's going to be the most improved. I think, like, when he last played for Nightingale, it was electric. He was an absolute stud. And I think that getting him teamed back up with not just even Nightingale, I think a big thing, like we've mentioned this name a couple times on the call, like, is getting him back with Nightingale, and it's getting him back with Will Morlock, man. That dude's a magician. Like, I just think that going to the program like Duluth, where he didn't maybe have access to the world-class amenities he was used to with the NTDP and just a certain standard. It's not improved off the MSU roster, but I'll say Ike Howard.
That counts. That's a fantastic answer. We'll catch Nate up real quick. Nate, where do you think Michigan State finishes in the Big Ten this year, and who is your most improved player?
In terms of the Big Ten, I think this is going to be the most competitive Big Ten that we've seen. Michigan State hasn't really been that competitive in the Big Ten. I think they're going to this year. I think Wisconsin's going to be really improved. I think Minnesota and Michigan are obviously going to be good. And then Penn State, Ohio State, those two are a little bit more, we'll see, but I think it's going to be really competitive. So I'll say they finish fourth. And then in terms of most improved, I'll give a most improved guy who was on the roster last year. And a guy that you kind of mentioned, Clay, is a little underrated, but I'll go Matt Baswell. I think he's primed to have just a really, really solid year on the blue line.
I'll do the vet move here. I'll look into the camera and say Michigan State's going to win the Big Ten. And the reason why I say that is because nothing happens if they don't. And if they do, I clip that and look like a genius. So, okay, moving on. Who do you think is going to lead the team in points, and who do you think will lead the team in goals?
Goals, Ike Howard.
Yeah, Ike Howard. I was going to say Ike Howard and Ike Howard. So.
Okay, that was easy.
I'll say, if I have to mix it up and say, Ike Howard goals, maybe he doesn't get all the assists, I'll give it to points to Dorward, because I think Dorward's going to have a good mix of some goals and feed Ike the assist more than Russell. So, because I think that's going to be that's my three that I put together. So, yeah.
So I'll change my points leader to Levshunov.
Oh, I like that.
I like that.
That's
some spice. I like it.
Because of the way that the Howard answers are trending, I'm going to tweak the question. Best transfer not, or most impactful transfer not named Howard.
I think, it's a really young team. And I think Reed Webster's, presence as a grad guy, I think that's going to be really big for this group. And, he gets to reunite with DeMichael, like Jerry mentioned, and he's a Grand Rapids kid. He's gonna have a lot of family at games now, and I think I'll go with Webster outside of Howard.
Yeah, I think that was my initial answer. If I had to throw a guy, like, Crossman could be pretty big. I mean, You think about the 3 defensemen we've gassed up the most on this show are 2 freshmen and a sophomore. So, maybe having, between him and Nash, I think are going to be really important. Veteran presence back in that blue line group. So, Crossman, I think, could be pretty important. But yeah, I think Reed, if we're going to talk non-Ike Howard transfers, like Reed's steadying presence and just being there before, because I think either with Nate or my prediction, or of course your prediction too, Clay, like any of our 3, I think we're kind of hinting MSU NCAA tournament. So, when that happens, you got to have a guy like Reed who's been through it all, and for me, that's going to be really vital.
Absolutely. Well, hey, this is the most excited I've been about a hockey season. I'm sure it's probably the most excited Nate's been to write about a particular team, considering kind of the levels he's had to go through here. And I'm really excited for the season. And I just want to thank you all again for always being willing to give your time to join the show and your knowledge as well. And I know everyone appreciates it. Christmas this year, if you're not already, subscriptions to the Lansing State Journal and Spartans Illustrated. It's that simple. It's not a big Christmas gift. Santa could flip that coin easy, man. It's not that expensive. You get to read great coverage from these 2 guys. Any parting thoughts?
Oh man,
yeah, the season going on. That's about it.
Yeah, the worst part of doing this show, Clay, is you have us do this, and now I have to realize that like I got to go back in and waiting for like 3 more weeks. Like that's the
I know
that's the killer here. But all the junior kids are starting up. Junior seasons are going. I'm ready to go. Like let's just get to this thing rolling.
For anyone listening, send letters to the Lansing State Journal and have them let me go to Boston College for that series.
Yeah, let's get Nate to Chestnut Hill, buddy. Oh my God, you got to get there.
Nate,
I'm super
I will
excited.
say I am a hater though. They rank behind BU and Northeastern for me. So you don't need them. You don't need them as bad as BU, but we'll get you there. We'll get you there.
Nate, if I wrote under a bunch of different names the same idea of a letter, would that work? If I wrote 82 letters saying, I'm a Boston grad or Boston College grad living in Lansing, I've developed this love for Michigan State, and I just really need Nate to be there to experience it all. Is that going to work?
I think I'm going to have to walk this back. I don't know. I might get in trouble now if Clay's just harassing all
Here's how you get it done, Nate, is you got to tell him, you're scouting for when football goes there. Because I think football is supposed to go there like next year. So tell Graham that you're scouting for him, the bars and restaurants. And you can go do that one hot like hamburger challenge with like 5 pounds of fries from Man vs. Food.
Yeah,
if you give that to Graham, I think Graham's gonna have to find the money. So
yeah, awesome guys. Well, thank you all so much. Everybody who's listening, drop a like, drop your comments on all the answers to the questions we asked for predictions. We love to hear your thoughts, and of course, subscribe. Thank you all, and go green.